Welcome back. Here's an Ohm. Look at his little
Adorable.
tentacles.
Uh,
Luckily, yeah, shout out to Derek Crabb who got this like custom made for me. But luckily the Ohm is happy because of the blue eyes because they've got rage when they are red. So I'll cradle this for
yes,
a bit.
just be careful not to feed it after midnight or something. Then you're safe.
Oh, or water, isn't that the gremlins?
Ah, yes, water.
Something like that. Okay, so unfortunately, we did Harry's number 2 because it was connected with my number 3. So now we are back to me again, and it is my number 2. Boop. Hal's Moving Castle. Yes, a beloved. So this in Japanese is Haru no Ugoku Shiro. 2004 fantasy, written and directed by Hayao Miyazaki. And the film is loosely based on the 1986 novel of the same name by British author Diana Wynne Jones. And while I did not like Earwig, I will say that I have read this and I did enjoy it. But there are some differences there. And we've got some great stars. Christian Bale is Howl. Emily Mortimer is one of the Sophies. But this film is set in a fictional kingdom where both magic and early 20th century technology are prevalent against the background of a war with another kingdom. Influenced by Miyazaki's opposition to the United States invasion of Iraq in 2003, the film contains, again, some strong anti war themes. Miyazaki stated that he, quote, had a great deal of rage, end quote, about the Iraq war, which led him to make a film which he felt would be poorly received. Isn't that interesting? In the United States. It also explores the theme of old age, depicting age positively as something which grants the protagonist freedom. The film contains feminist elements as well and carries messages about the value of compassion. In 2013, Miyazaki said that Howl's Moving Castle was his favorite creation, explaining, I wanted to convey the message that life is worth living, and I don't think that's changed. The film is thematically significantly different from the novel. While the novel focuses on challenging class and gender norms, the film focuses on love, personal loyalty, and the destructive effects of war. And it was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Animated Feature at the 78th Academy Awards, but lost to Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit in 2006, which I do recommend if you like Wallace and Gromit. And here is the plot. That jumbled piece of architecture, that cacophony of hissing steam and creaking joints with smoke billowing from it as it moves on its own, this is really well written. That castle is, I didn't write it, that castle is home to the magnificent wizard Howl, infamous for both his magical prowess and for being a womanizer, or so the rumor goes in Sophie Hatter's small town. Sophie, as the plain daughter of a hat maker, does not expect much from her future and is content with working hard in the shop. However, Sophie's simple life takes a turn for the exciting when she is ensnared in a disturbing situation and the mysterious wizard appears to rescue her. Unfortunately, this encounter, brief as it may be, spurs the vain and vengeful Witch of the Waste in a fit of jealousy caused by a past discord with Howl to put her curse on the maiden, turning her into an old woman. In an endeavor to return to normal, Sophie must accompany Howl and a myriad of eccentric companions, ranging from a powerful fire demon, Calcifer, to a hopping scarecrow in his a turnip in his living castle on a dangerous adventure as a raging war tears their kingdom apart. So I like this for a myriad of reasons, just like the eccentric characters. Definitely, yes, the eccentric characters that pop up. And once they are all in a room together in the castle, Howl actually makes a point of saying, like, well, we all have issues because the Witch of the Waste is there and she's aged up because her youth was kind of taken from her, or like shows what she actually is. Calcifer, of course, is this fire demon. The turnip has got this issue. Sophie's got a curse. Howl's got some issues. So it's really interesting that all these people coalesce in one area that have a bunch of issues. I love Jane Eyre. I don't know if anyone knows this. I love Jane Eyre. One of the reasons why I love Jane Eyre is because I feel like she's so relatable. And she may not be beautiful, but I think she's a strong character. And Sophie is certainly someone that I think struggles with her beauty. She believes that she doesn't have any. And even if you look at her sister and her mother, like those two look like twins. And then you've got Sophie, like, where did she come from? But she ends up gaining confidence in becoming this older woman. Like she's very shy and reserved as young Sophie. And then as this older woman, she's wise. She's able to trick people, slight manipulation. She tells people what for. So it's really interesting that she gains this confidence in becoming this older lady, even though this is her curse. And she takes care of this household, and she also falls in love with Howell. And Hal actually, he absolutely is a womanizer. He at one point, he she had arranged nicely. She cleans everything up, and she arranges, I guess, his shampoos and things like that. And he uses something accidentally, and it turns his lovely blonde locks into orange. And he runs out of the bathroom in a towel and yelling at her, like, "What have you done?" And at one point says something like, "If I can't be beautiful, there's like no point to live." And so that's who Hal is at the beginning, but you start to see him transition into someone who is actually not selfish, um, because he realizes he has something to fight for, who is Sophie. So of course there's a love story, which is something that draws me to it. I think just the fanciful nature of this as well. And the castle is connected to two different towns that you can use a doorknob to get to either one. And just the growth, I think, in Sophie, and seeing her stand up to a witch and stand up to the, I guess, the main um witch wizard in one of the kingdoms, and trying to protect Howell, and then being the one to save Howell in the end as well. And all is well. She has a similar, like I said about Porco Rosso, there are times where she's sleeping, or if she's just fully confident and doing things on her own, without anyone helping her, like near the end when the shop that they're at, slash the castle, is being bombed out. She's giving orders to everyone, and you see that she de-ages because she's not thinking about, herself. She's got this mission. And I think when she is fully confident, that curse kind of goes away. So I think the Witch of the Waste, this kind of played on her confidence and also her thought that she's not beautiful. Um, there is also another moment where, which I think is a sound clip that I have, that Hal is showing her some place that's kind of a safe haven for her away from the war. And she's kind of getting nervous of like, why is this happening? Why are you leaving? And she was young Sophie. And then like she starts to revert back into old Sophie and saying like, I'm not beautiful. And Hal's like, what are you talking about? You are. So just, yeah, I think Jane Eyre, in the sense of not realizing your worth or your value, and then realizing actually what that is, and coming into your own, whether you are sort of society's standard of beauty or not. I think that Sophie is such a great character, and a lot. There's some wackadoodle things that happen. I actually have a sweater with Calcifer on the back, and there's like bacon and eggs and everything. So whenever I wore that to school, they'd be like, is there bacon and eggs on your sweater? I'm like, yes, there is. But yeah, so my top two, again, I think maybe the first, well, probably the second one that I had seen, and this is something that I've shared with other people, but this is potentially something dangerous to share with other people because there are some wacky things going on. But yeah, the anti-war themes is certainly very strong. But this was one that this was probably one of the first times Harry broke my heart because he did not like it as much as I did. Thought for sure as a winner. So please tell me all about it.
Uh, this is the one Studio Ghibli movie that I forget exists, actually.
That's terrible to
I
say.
know. I
Oh,
eh, this isn't gonna be good. Um, I it seems to me like it's Hayao Miyazaki kind of struggling with an adaptation of a specific source. Obviously, he has his own take on Little Mermaid later with Ponyo, and he adapts his own work. But I think in this case, the reason why I have such a hard time remembering it isn't just because it's the one we watched, a year and a half ago, but it felt confused in a way that I wasn't expecting, and that's just critics speak for saying I was confused. The film was confused, quote unquote, because I don't know. There was just something about the way this magical world unfolded. It didn't feel as um, I don't know. I guess clean to me as some of these other examples. I couldn't really get a sense for what was going on, and especially the anti-war themes. That's I guess he was very passionate about. I mean, that looking back, I can't really discern a coherent message. I mean, I'm sure it's there, and it just went over my head. But I was not. I guess with Studio Ghibli and Hayao Miyazaki, there is a clarity of storytelling that I'm kind of expecting, and for this one, I was really I never really felt attached to anything, and I think that that's kind of what kept me at bay and then confused pretty much for the whole runtime.
This is how you know Harry has no heart. He's not a human being. He is a robot, folks.
Gee, I was going with the dumb defense, not the robot defense, but I guess it could be both.
There, I will say that, and even this last time that I watched, because I watched my number two and number one, I guess on the snow days, leading up to this, just so I could have or foment, right? A proper thoughts on it. That the main witch of the kingdom that actually trained Howl, her motives are a bit confusing because she wants Howl a part of that army, but then she ends up like she at the very end, it seems like she had the power to stop that war right away. The war didn't need to be happening, but it
Uh,
she was, like, waiting for Hal to almost, like, receive back his, humanity, which happened to be, like, his soul and his heart, which was Calcifer. Because once that happened and she's, like, looking through, Heen, which is the dog, Heen's eyes, she sees, she's like, "Okay, well, that didn't turn out as I thought. Give me the minister and the king, and let's put an end to this war." So that's like I'm confused about her motivations, but everything else I'm not confused about. So, but I again, I think that could be anyone's reads because I'm sometimes I'm confused about things that you are not confused about. So,
like Totoro.
like Tortoro. Yeah, maybe Ocean Waves would be more apt.
Oh
I don't
yes.
know. Oh, man. Well, anyways, I recommend Howl. So again, it's a Stella versus Harry situation, and you can decide what you would like. But yeah, that's what it is. Okay. Anything else on Howl?
I do appreciate that this was nominated for an Oscar because it is so, at least to begin, so anti-American. And it's either the American populace didn't quite grasp it like I did, or we just are sort of overwhelmed by Studio Ghibli all the time. Because certainly Howl's Moving Castle is another example where the visuals are just so stunning, especially the centerpiece of the moving castle, which is quite something, and animated in like a somewhat different style. Just good stuff, and
Hmm.
it did have to be nominated alongside these other movies. I don't know what the Pixar movie was that year, but I think it was kind of it's almost like they split the difference. They didn't give it to the expected Pixar movie, but they didn't give it to Miyazaki. They gave it to the Wallace and Gromit, which is interesting,
Yeah.
respectable.
Yeah. And just so you know, Howl's blonde hair goes to black after the orange situation.
Ah, yes.
I saw
That's
something on Instagram, not recently, but just about like I get everyone forgets that he had this, this episode, this like childish episode of that. But you get a sense of like who Howell is right there because there's this rumor that he is with these young women and then he eats their hearts and though that seems more likely of the Witch of the Waste because she's so enamored with Calcifer when she realizes it's Hal's heart, but it's clearly like he really is a womanizer and that gets him into trouble because the Witch of the Waste he kind of what is a good, I don't know, he dropped her pretty quickly. And then, or I guess he just didn't want her because she was way older anyways. And then because she kind of sensed Hal's essence on Sophie, like that whole thing. So a lot of issues because of that. But he does not treat Sophie poorly at all, except for that one yelling at her. Okay, our number ones.
Oh my gosh. And it didn't take 9 hours to get here.
Oh my gosh, finally. Yes, this is how a proper podcast runs.
Yes. Well, now I know.
Okay. Boop.
So, because I'm a basic B, my number one is Spirited Away. And I have to be careful when I approach this in terms of recommendation because there's essentially two arguments that I'm making sort of simultaneously. One, that it's my favorite Ghibli movie and my number one for this podcast, but also that it is possibly the greatest film I've ever seen.
Mm,
And those are two different sort of divergent discussions. Um, and to the other one, the greatest movie, it's to me what's so impressive about the movie is that it is exquisitely crafted. Now, where I'd usually say carefully designed, in this case, I'm going to say exquisitely crafted because the design is really evident in nearly every moment. I took a bunch of notes. Oh, but before I get there, let me tell you what the movie is
yeah,
about.
what's Spirited Away about? Yeah, let's see how the synopsis is for this
Yeah, I
story.
know. Stubborn, spoiled, and naive, making a lot of judgments. This is very judgy. 10-year-old Chihiro Ogino is less than pleased when she and her parents discover an abandoned amusement park on the way to their new house. Cautiously venturing inside, she realizes that there is more to this place than meets the eye, as strange things begin to happen once dusk falls. Ghostly apparitions and food that turns her parents into pigs are just the start. Chihiro has unwittingly crossed over into the spirit world. Now trapped, she must summon the courage to live and work amongst spirits with the help of the enigmatic Haku and the cast of unique characters she meets along the way. Vivid and intriguing, Sen to Chihiro no Kamikakushi, which is the Japanese title, tells the story of Chihiro's journey through an unfamiliar world as she strives to save her parents and return home. Um, so yeah, this is a movie from 2001, winner of the Best Animated Feature Oscar. I think the only time that's ever been done by an anime. Although there have been nominations. I want to say Weathering with You. Not. I'm pretty
Mm,
sure Your Name was not nominated, which is kind of a surprise.
yeah.
But anyway, so I, I don't know how we've gone this whole podcast without mentioning one of the key players of Ghibli. By the way, the other founding member was Toshio Suzuki, but for this conversation, I suppose the key member is Joe Hisaishi, who is the composer on all these movies, and he is one of the great film composers. Princess Mononoke has an absolutely incredible score, and for this one, it starts right away. The first thing you may notice is just that beautiful piano leitmotif, which I think was mirrored in Breath of the Wild a lot later, which was kind of like Studio Ghibli the game. Um, and there is just this incredible sense of all the filmic elements sort of working in perfect harmony that it feels kind of like a symphony almost. And that was the strange word that I kept thinking because uh, just the way that the story was told, as I mentioned or quoted, there is that part where Chihiro is introduced to the spirit world, her parents turn into pigs, and those two moments are so crucial because they are essentially together. That it's not like she's like somebody tells her, "Hey, there's a bunch of ghosts. There's another world and it's spirits." It happens in concert with her losing her parents essentially. And so, with every plot beat, with every introduction of a new idea, there is this underlying emotion that is surprisingly effective every time. And at some point, you just kind of surrender to it and stop being impressed by this children's movie or this animated movie and just kind of go along with it. Um, and it is just this cavalcade of just like super intriguing things. The spirits that you meet, whether it's the huge walrus sort of guy who doesn't say anything, or the bouncing heads. This movie is really just bursting with imagination. And I think what's interesting is that it kind of obviates the Star Trek problem, where like you have some guy with a forehead and he's like an alien. In this case, like the in their brief appearances, every new spirit like evinces some sort of alien culture without even like speaking words. Like it's just like you just get this immediate sense for what they're about, and that there's so much more suggested. And as the story goes on, the main character Chihiro, sort of interacts with these things and learns about them, and it is a coming of age story, and a very effective one. uh, Again, just in the way the film is constructed, Chihiro is a very effective audience proxy because, again, there isn't that moment where somebody's just telling you what's going on like naked. Like it's always happening with something, and she doesn't just communicate exposition; she facilitates it. But there is always this central through line of emotion. We understand feelings like shock or betrayal. There's a moment of betrayal in the movie, and so there's just it just for a 2 hour movie, which is very long, it keeps moving because it doesn't have to slow it down to explain things, because you just sort of you feel it and you intuit things, and it actually sort of teaches you how to like read the world almost and understand something, which is her journey basically. And so the approach to coming of age is kind of this generation of empathy and compassion, as you mentioned with Howl's Moving Castle. Um, and it just the way that the character works and sort of changes is all very logical, and it begins when this massive creature comes into the bathhouse that she eventually works at, and they call it a stink spirit, and everybody's like, oh my god, this thing is so horrible. And she deals with it because the smell is just so bad that somebody has to deal with it. So it's not like she's this chosen one, although her fate is sort of tied into another character as we discover. But she just operates like anybody would, sort of logically, in a situation like this, and she solves problems, and she grows. And It's just, let's see, it's one of the weird things that I picked up on last night when I was watching it for just the second time, is how actually funny the movie gets. Like it gets funnier as it goes on, which is sort of the opposite of what you would expect for a movie that makes me cry. Like I'm pretty sure I was crying in the theater, so I was crying last night. I was watching it, because usually it starts out funny, and that's how it sort of like opens you up emotionally, and then it hits you with a tragedy later. But this one, like the more you learn about the world, the more you learn about these characters, you just sort of understand them and see them interacting. And there's this incredible sequence where these villainous characters who are menacing Chihiro, the giant baby and the bird with the head of Yubaba the witch, they get transformed into smaller, diminutive creatures. In one case, a mouse, and then like a little, like I guess a tiny bird. It's even hard to describe, but they just sort of become allies of the main character, who just takes instant mercy on them. And then they just sort of have this like wordless change of heart and character arc. And so it's a movie that is just sort of like filled with this um, beauty and appreciation of humanity. And by the time Chihiro gets on the train to go one way to the other witch's house across this ocean, it's just like God, the music and everything, and like how far she's come, the characters, like it's just like I have to stop talking about it, because I'm pretty sure I might just start crying right now. And how embarrassing would that be?
Well, I would cherish your tears, but
Ah,
she's similar. I mean, she's similar to Sophie because there is that moment where Sophie and the Witch of the Waste from Hal are climbing up the stairs to get to the king, and the Witch of the Waste is heavy set to be kind, and no magic is allowed. She's got to do it on her own, and so then Sophie's old, but she's like cheering on the Witch of the Waste and trying to help her out. And then when the Witch of the Waste is aged even more, and she ends up taking her and being compassionate to her. So yeah, similar to that, where Tahiro, I think Chihiro it has this way about her. I don't know if it's like her innocence, perhaps, and that she's not been maybe jaded by like negative humanity, though there are characters around that are really mean spirited in that house, in the
yeah.
bathhouse. But she I think more than takes pity, but, like, she's certainly empathizing with some of these people. I mean, she is the one to pull out the weird bicycle thing, and she's the one to help No Face.
Mhm.
And yeah, those turnarounds of potentially antagonist characters attaching themselves to somebody, I think really speaks to the heart of that particular character. This one, it's weird.
Yes.
Meaning, like, there's a lot of crazy stuff that goes on, which is why I think I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to a first-time anime watcher because, like, if they can't handle the strangeness, which I find wonderful about anime, that I think just like weirdness and, beauty kinda go hand in hand with anime, but this is certainly one of the ones that I would not recommend. But watching her, and it's just really interesting that I don't know how long this film takes. Like, what is the span of time? Because she's
Right.
working. She ends up working, and then she's gotta, of course, save her parents, and then they leave as if nothing happens. I don't know if that's like a span of a week. Is she there a month? I still each time try to sort out a bit more because I'm still kind of wrapping my head around and confused with her relationship with, the dragon. What's his name?
Mhm. Haku.
Yeah, because they have a history together, like, she fell into the river, she nearly drowned, but she was saved by that spirit, and so now he's kind of with her again. So I kind of try to figure out because he balances between both worlds, like, he was existing in both, like, the pre-tunnel world and the post-tunnel, so I always try to work through that. But it's certainly I think it probably is one of the most I don't know if fanciful would be the right word, but it just seems like humans are not the norm, and so, like, fantasy is the norm in this, and I don't know if that's true of any of the other films that we've watched where there's, like, either a balance or it's heavier on the side of, like, normalcy and
Mhm.
fantasy isn't there, but I think that's what makes this so special is because of the layers of fantasy, and just one of the first scenes of her walking across the bridge, and you see all the different types of people there that are not humans, I think really speaks highly, and yeah, the dust motes are so cute, and they eat the little
Yes.
stars.
That was
You
amazing.
feed them the little stars, yeah, so again,
Oh.
just cute, fun things. Yeah, I really like it. It didn't make my top 5. I do really enjoy this film, but I can't watch it repeatedly. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is. I don't know if there's, like, too much going on, so it's almost like overload,
Mhm.
but, yeah, it's also, again, just trying to sort out her relationship with Haku.
Well, it's surprisingly not a light viewing experience. I mean, this is something that I
Mhm.
would still, I think, recommend to kids, although getting the age right is really tough because I would not have been interested in a movie like this at like the age of 10, which I think is probably, or like 8, maybe I think that's kind of earliest you wouldn't. Because if I watched this movie when I was 8 or younger than that, I would have A, had nightmares, and B, developed a crush on the Lin character, who's sort of like the
Oh,
older
yeah.
mentor.
Yeah.
But I think it's like it's one of those movies where Miyazaki set out to help kids kind of like see the world or appreciate the world, and I think that that's I mean, like I even felt that like I was reminded watching the movie now of like moments in my life where I had feelings like that, where I sort of somebody you meet who you don't really like at first, like later on you get a better picture for them and you appreciate them. Like it's essentially a movie about capturing that feeling and also while at the same time being this incredible fantasy world that essentially like there are movies that kind of take the cantina scene from Star Wars and have that moment like in Hellboy 2 where they go down to the troll market and that's always a big highlight. Spirited Away is essentially like that but the whole movie because it's really, I mean, it takes place in this one location that is just so deep and rich with detail that feels like a whole universe, that by the time you have to leave it feels like you're really like leaving something behind. And then, of course, aided by the incredible score. So it's just, I mean, to me, it was such a surprising, overwhelming experience because I saw this at a special screening in theaters that I think was done by Fandom or Fandango or something, one of
Oh, yeah,
those.
yeah, yeah.
And I almost didn't go because I didn't want to drive 3 minutes to Universal Studios because I'm a man incredibly lazy. This is back when you could go to the theaters and be safe, and I still didn't want to go. So I'm so glad that I did, because it was just the biggest surprise. Because obviously I've known about Spirited Away for forever. I mean, it's such a famous movie, and so I did not expect to have it just have this incredible effect on me. And I feel kind of dumb talking about it, being like, "You got to see Spirited Away," as if like people know that they have to see Spirited Away. And so for me, like, I would recommend this, uh, even for somebody who hasn't seen anime, because
Ooh,
if you gave them something else, if you said watch, not Akira, but something else, and they didn't like it and they swore off anime, then they would never get to see Spirited
I
Away, and I
see.
think that that would be absolutely unacceptable.
Yeah, I guess I can see that.
Mm.
Another character that I think uh, represents the studio, No Face,
Oh yeah,
which is really like I
absolutely.
feel like Totoro and No Face are pretty well known,
Mhm.
which is really interesting that of this film, No Face would be the one that is the standout.
I know, because like when he appears in the film, I was like, oh god, like I forget what his deal is, because he's never really explained.
Yeah.
And he has kind of an arc, but he remains a pretty mysterious character, but very intriguing, and obviously an unforgettable design. And that whole, I mean, the image of her sitting on the train with no face and the little creatures, like that is so like
Yeah.
that's an icon that people who haven't seen the film will have seen that before somewhere for sure.
Yeah. And of course, you could always buy a coin dispenser thing where you put a coin on a plate and then No Face lifts it up. I've seen those.
Oh, interesting.
And that's number 5. Okay. Anything else on Spirited Away? I can't
um,
wait to see if that's coming through my audio. I assume it is
I know.
because I can hear it.
I would hope so. Otherwise, it's just people are gonna have no idea what we're
Yeah,
talking
I
about.
know. What sound?
I guess my last note about Spirited Away is just that it manages not to feel patronizing in a way that I think a lot of morality plays or morality
Mm,
tales might. I mean, that's the vibe that was intended with Grave of the Fireflies, where it was supposed to be about like kids, you should, um, really respect your elders, or else you're going to die in a war. And I think that's the vibe that the only vibe I don't like in the Ghibli oeuvre is when it's like about city people who move to the countryside and find like a better way of life. Like that just it happens so often that I feel like it kind of gets to be a bit much. And in this case, like a girl growing up, like in this plot summary, it starts off telling us that she is oh gosh, what is it? Stubborn, spoiled, and naive. And like I don't get that. I mean, she just seems a little upset that she's moving, which is pretty, natural for a kid. And so it's not so much that she like has to really learn so much, but that she does grow, and like striking that balance to where it doesn't feel chiding. I think is just another example of like very very careful storytelling at play here.
do you feel like you might be a hypocrite?
In what way? Well, yes, but in what way?
In the way that you left an urban center to go to not
Oh,
necessarily a country, but you're not in an urban center anymore.
no, I'm not. And I barely was in Los Angeles. I mean, that's a city that is a city in name only. I didn't really have any experiences with other people. It was just very polluted, and the sky was obscured by buildings. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I did learn a lesson from that whole experience, but I don't know. I saw Spirited Away in L.A., so I think that
Okay.
that's why I'm the exception.
I see. So in moving to where you are now, you don't think that, I don't know, your viewpoints have changed or your life has changed at all?
Yeah, maybe it could be. I've been farming a lot more. I've been pulling up the ghost crabs from the beach.
Oh, if only you took my advice and went out looking for them. Oh boy. Okay, there it is.
There it
Spirited
is.
Away. The pigs. I will say the scene with the pigs, well, the parents eating ravenously
Mm.
and gluttonously reminds me of Little Nightmares, the first game in particular, because a lot of it is about gluttony and these like large people that just are eating and you don't want to know what they're eating, but it just reminds me. And there's one scene where you have to like escape them. and they're just at this. They're on stools eating, and then when you run past them, they get a sniff and start trying to catch you and eat you. But
Wow.
oh, okay. So they were
Scary.
eating for a week, maybe. Well, no, I guess they became pigs, and then
Yeah, it's weird
were in
the
that
timeline
farm.
because yeah, it kind of
Yeah,
resets almost a little bit.
yeah,
It's tricky though because um, Ghibli food is sort of famous for being like very delicious looking despite being two-dimensional illustrations, and so
yeah.
it's like, well, how could you resist if you were in that situation,
It's true. Yep. Oh man. Well, my number one should be a shock to no one. I think even you know, because I confessed it. It's Kiki's Delivery Service. I did have a shirt with Kiki. I couldn't find it today, but I did wear my Ghibli Halloween shirt with all the peoples on
There
it.
it is.
Okay. So in Japanese, it is Majo no Takihuban, 1989 animated fantasy film written, produced, and directed by Miyazaki and adapted from the 1985 novel by Aiko Kadono. And I've looked for this, but I feel like it's only in Japanese and it's like out of print, so I can't find it, which is sad. There was something I wanted to say. I guess that's it. So I'll talk about it. Okay, I can talk about that later. Okay. Kiki, a 13-year-old witch in training, must spend a year living on her own in a distant town in order to become a full-fledged witch. Leaving her family and friends, Kiki undertakes this tradition when she flies out into the open world atop her broomstick with her black cat Gigi. As she settles down in the coastal town of Koriko, Kiki struggles to adapt and ends up wandering the streets with no place to stay until she encounters Osano, who offers Kiki boarding in exchange for making what's happening over there?
I don't know. I
In
just
ex-
heard like sorry, keep
the
going.
bodies are hitting the floor. Okay. Who offers Kiki boarding in exchange for making deliveries for her small bakery. Before long, Kiki decides to open her own courier service by broomstick, beginning her journey to independence. In attempting to find her place among the townsfolk, Kiki brings with her exciting new experiences and comes to understand the true meaning of responsibility. And I will say that there comes a point in this film that she ends up losing her witch abilities. She can't hear Gigi speaking, and then she is unable to fly. So a lot of this is kind of wrapped up in some stuff I'll talk about. Oh my goodness. Okay, so why do I love this film? Now, this is a film that I will say that I don't think it's the best Ghibli film, but it is my favorite. I think it will always be my favorite. It would have to be really, really good in order to supplant this as my number one. And this is something that I could watch repeatedly, that I would enjoy it. It wouldn't wear down on me, but it's good to save some of those things for a bad day and have you cheer it up. I love Kiki. I think that she is a fun character, a 13-year-old. She is pretty representative as well as a realistic representation of a 13-year-old. And I say that having again taught them for 10 plus years, and just the awkwardness that's there with boys trying to understand who you are. She leaves her family, so you've got this girl who's struggling with independence as well as reliance, either self-reliance or reliance on others. So you start to see that as she grows, and you she starts to doubt herself. I think a lot of the strong message from this, similar to Whisper of the Heart, is finding what you're passionate about, believing in yourself, and I think also liking what you're doing, because certain points, especially when she gives the what is it? The herring and pumpkin pie, I believe it is. And the girl who receives it is so snotty. And that's also when Kiki gets sick and she's just really downtrodden. I think she starts to just look at what she's doing, look at the people around her, and she also is not fitting in and not having people groups. So it just starts to weigh heavy on her, and those emotions start to pull away, I think, her magical ability. And until there's something that is at stake, something huge at stake, her friend Tombo, which, probably her future love interest. I mean, they're certainly friends, and I clearly has a crush on her. His life is in danger. She realizes, the power that she has, that she cares for Tombo, that it's important, her abilities, her flying abilities, and that she's the only one that can really save him, that she's able to reclaim her flight and her magical superpowers. But I love how exuberant she is, how it shows what it's like to leave home for the first time, even though she's 13, so this is extreme, and be in a new place and not know anyone, not have any lodgings, and then the kindness of strangers, and how are you interacting with people? How are you using your skills, and how can you barter with someone or work with someone and come up with some good terms of, I'm living here, but what can I do to help you? And then trying to fit in. And beauty, I think, is another theme here, just because she complains a great deal about her dress, I think it's a lilac flock, I think she called it, but she wishes there was something else, and she compares herself a lot with the town girls, and I think that's, the whole comparison destroys contentment. I think that really is something that leads into that doubt, and her losing her powers, and not really having friends, and when she sees Tombo with those people, she's like, "No, I can't be with you." So there's so much going on, and it's sometimes hard to watch. Like, it's really sad, some of this stuff that's going on, and how hard she works, and that bratty girl not accepting it, and then just girls sometimes not being nice, and what happens, that our confidence goes down. And we've gotta reconcile with that. And I'm glad that she gets her powers back, though there is an ambiguous ending depending on what you're watching. There are two different endings, one which Gigi just meows at the end, and one which the voice actor says something. So that's like, oh, what's happened here is does she have her full powers or does she not? But I feel like it's a beautiful film, and I think it really gets at what it's like to be a 13-year-old. I mean, these are extreme circumstances, but I think it gets to that awkwardness and how hard it is. And then throwing upon independence and trying to figure out who she is as a witch and what is her skill set and everything, I think is pretty powerful. And she meets friends along the way inadvertently, as all the great Ghibli characters do. And yeah, I think I think that's what I'll say. Now, this was something, again, you were not you were not on board fully for. Still confused, but yeah, thoughts.
Uh, this movie definitely captures more than most Miyazaki, one of Miyazaki's great fixations, which is the sensation of flying and how fun that would be. And I think there are a lot of really breathtaking sequences where she's reaching out to somebody and stuff like that. Um, I admire how you describe the movie, how you talk about it, and what you see in it. And as you describe it, I'm sort of remembering like, oh yeah, that was really nice. I think for me, it's just about the chosen subject matter. I think this is also based on a novel. It might even be a non-Japanese novel, but for me, like one of the reasons why I didn't like fantasy growing up was because of wizards. I could not deal with wizards, specifically like Harry Potter. And now that that's become in vogue to diss on Harry Potter, I guess I feel vindicated. Whatever, it's gotten pretty harsh. But I can't stand that stuff. And then I guess witches in this kind of interpretation, um, I guess it's just sort of the female version, and it's a little bit more interesting because of that. But ultimately, I don't know. I just never really I never really had like that fantasy of like being able to like cast spells or anything like that. And so while I can appreciate the dramatic aspects of it, I can't fully grok the actual fantastical conceits, which is unfortunate. But I mean, other than that, like I certainly like I don't dislike this movie. Unlike some of the others, like I can definitely appreciate its spirits and its more light-hearted tone. Um, but yeah, for me, it wasn't one that really reached out and grabbed me in quite the same way.
Do you think I'm gonna say something sexist here. Do you think that it would have reached you differently if you were female?
Maybe. I mean, I well, actually one of the on that top 10 episode that you were on, Stella, the very first version of that, which was many years ago, I had a co-host, a friend of mine, Cassandra, and she talked about Kiki as one of her entries, and I had never seen the movie until we watched it, so I think maybe there was some sort of like male female, just like natural gravitation or repelling against the idea of witches. And it's not like I have anything against girls or women, like not really, but I don't know. It's just again, I've never had uh, that desire to fly around on a broomstick or wave a wand around. And even when I say it, it sounds like I'm insulting you, but I'm just describing literally what happens in these things. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to be in this space or in this mode, but I couldn't get on board with it the same way.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Yeah, I think it does. Well, for me anyways, I think the issues probably transcend male female in the teenage
Hmm.
sense because a lot of the issues that she goes through I think male 13-year-olds would as well, and perhaps the
Yeah.
beauty issue would not be as prevalent. I think there'd be something else, but feeling like an outsider I think is something that we've all dealt with. I get what
Yeah.
you're saying. I think maybe I wouldn't be. I think her witchcraft or like her being a witch is like safer because her skill is flying. I think if it were like using magical words to do something would be completely different. So
Yeah.
it's a bit safer in that respect. But even in the beginning, when she flies off, which is very quick, she's like, "I'm gonna do. It's a full moon. We're doing it." And she meets that one witch, and the witch had already been in a town and is going somewhere else. And her skill is fortune telling, and you can tell that Kiki just went off without thinking because she's like, "Oh, a skill. I wonder what my skill will be." And it's like, "Oh no, Kiki." But yeah, she's like, "Well, I'm pretty deft at flying, so I'm gonna do that." And so I think that's really unique because everyone else would probably do like potions or something like that. I
Right.
also like the fact that in order to save Tombo, she her broom broke and she was in the process of making a new one when she kind of discovered that her power was gone. But she's on the street and she steals like a street sweeper's broom and says, "I'll give it back, I promise," which she never does. But it's the street sweeper broom, and she ends up like at the very end because there's an ending to it. You have to watch through the credits because there is an end credit scene. She still has that broom, which I think is really interesting. But I don't know about the I was thinking about that when I was watching it yesterday or the day before, that in creating something, which is something, like Star Wars fans, the Jedi create their own lightsaber. Um, with Harry Potter, which you don't like, the wand is kind of picked like how they work with it. So it's interesting that she took something that was already pre-made and didn't remake her own. But I guess
Hmm.
the significance of how she got it is probably pretty powerful. So she used that and she was able to that broom was wonky because Tombo barely made it out alive, but she was able to really work with that broom afterwards. So there's probably a lot of stuff there. But yeah, I do love the Kiki. And Gigi is again very cute. So it's again that those familiars, those little animals that you have. And there's a romance story in there too, because Gigi falls in love with the white cat. If you remember that, the
Yes.
neighboring cat that he says is a snooty cat, but then they have some children. They have three white cats and a black cat as a child. I don't know if that works genetically or not, but we'll go with it. Well, okay. How do you feel?
I feel like I may just have escaped this one with our friendship intact, but who
May
knows?
have. Oh boy. Even though you said, I don't understand Howl, I don't like witches, but yeah, maybe you have.
Oh
Uh,
wait, I know how to rescue this actually, because now we can talk about my actual number one, which is a movie by the name of Ghost in the Shell 2, a
Whatever.
Studio Ghibli
That is
film.
not I'm so glad I got out of that. I didn't need that in my life because
I
I
know
would
you
have
can
had to
watch it,
watch the first one.
and it's funny. It actually doesn't say Studio Ghibli anywhere on this Blu-ray disc, but
Oh, false advertising?
It was a co-production or some sort of co-production with IG, and I suppose Kodansha was a distributor. But it's a very beautiful movie that I think we're not going to talk about. Anyway,
Probably
I
not.
I mean, Ghibli is it was interesting to really like watch all those movies sort of in a compressed timeline. I did not expect that to happen, and I wonder if I would have ever watched them without your impetus. So it was really good to have that sort of curated experience, and I thank you for it because there were a lot of hidden gems in there.
You're welcome. So 2023, we'll have a horror film.
2023, we're just gonna skip this year altogether.
Well, it might take us a while.
Oh, I see what you're
We
saying.
have to
Yeah,
carefully curate because I'm not about to watch gore fests. You've got to be like worthwhile ones like Midsommar and Hereditary.
Hereditary. Well, ironically, I did just watch The
Yeah.
Witch from
The Witch.
2015,
Yeah.
and that was a witch I did enjoy.
Okay. This see there. So you're a hypocrite again for the second time
Exactly.
tonight.
Right. Doesn't it just enrage and confuse everyone? Truly.
When there's hypocrisy,
Yes.
I
Well,
think so.
especially from me. Yeah.
From
But
you, are you not normally a hypocrite? What? What are you saying?
it's too late. I can't I'm not no longer making sense with the things I'm saying.
So,
But
yeah, we've reached that point. Friends, listeners, if you listen to Quinoa, you'll know that there's a certain point in the episode that, yeah, he loses track of what he's saying. Sometimes it's Donovan's fault because he interrupts you and then you can't get back on track. Maybe
and then he says,
90% it's Donovan's fault. But then, yeah, so here we are. Well, it's a good thing that we're nearly over, so you don't have to worry about that. But thank you for coming on.
"Thank you for having me on. It was a pleasure. I was looking forward to it."
Thanks for spending 50 hours maybe together.
Could be.
That's not
Yeah.
an exaggeration, I think, probably.
Right.
Mm-mm-mm.
A lot of movies.
A lot of movies. Where can listeners find you and what can they do to support you?
Well, listeners or readers can find me on With Eyes East, which is about similar to this Asian pop culture and media. I did write something about Princess Mononoke after we'd watched it, just talking about how surprisingly unclear that movie was, and I might end up writing something about Spirited Away, and that is where you can find our next installment in the Ghibli cast. I think we've probably left enough that we can still talk, at length about the studio and everything
Yeah.
for another one. But my main source, my main plug, of course, is quinoa. I mean, quinoa. Ugh, I don't know why I can't say it correctly in the presence of Stella. But anyway, you can find that at quinoanswers.com. Just follow Donovan on Twitter. I don't know if he shares any shirtless pics there, but that's always welcome, always a good sight. Donovan, of course, is the man. If you're a listener, then you've heard him before. And that's the podcast that we do together where we talk about social issues inquisitively and come to many revelatory conclusions that are always blowing Stella away. And she's like, oh my God, you guys are so concrete and conclusive and coherent with your ideas. Thank you,
Heck,
Stella.
no. Let me tell you two things. Number one, Donovan does take a lot of shirtless pictures. And at
Yes,
one
he
point
does.
on Twitter today, because it popped up, I guess, because Donovan, I don't know, but it's someone posted like take or post your last picture with no commentary. And Donovan responds, I better not. So who even knows what he's been doing? But secondly, what was my second point? Oh,
About our podcast.
on the Candace Owens episode, this is something that you can expect from Quinoa, is
Mm.
that at the very beginning, Donovan said something along the lines of, I don't think she's stupid. I don't think she's ignorant. And then as the time went on, I'm hearing him say, actually, she's just ignorant. She's dumb. I'm like, okay, so 50 minutes in, she's like, yeah. So just know that they contradict themselves before they answer questions.
Expect hypocrisy and you won't be
Indeed.
disappointed.
Yep. When can we expect With Eyes East this episode? Let me Rephrase. Oh no, I had the Harry situation happen. When can we expect the crossover of the Ghibli Ghibli on with Eyes East? What month would you say?
1 month. Um, I don't know. What's a good month for you? I don't.
Okay, well, I know when we're recording. You know we're recording next week.
Oh, okay. So that was my that was my question because I
Oh,
was a bit
okay. But I just
confused.
wondered, were you waiting until February to release it?
Do you think that would be better?
Oh no, this isn't your show. Don't ask me questions. I was just asking you questions so that people know when to go over there.
I see. No, no, no. You can expect it in January.
Oh wow, look, he came up with an answer, folks. He's
Rare.
not a complete waste.
Right, exactly.
Oh boy. Well, remember you can send any questions or comments to backrolltooracle@gmail.com. Do you have an email you want, or do you want me to just forward things that people email me you about you?
You can just forward them to me. That'd be great. I
Okay.
expect many great comments about my sexy glasses. I don't know,
Interesting.
my intense intelligence. Mm,
Okay. The
I don't know, whatever
flushing,
you
the
got.
plumbing in your
The
house.
plumbing, which is very good.
And hopefully I just want people to be enraged and inflamed at your not liking Howl and Kiki.
Exactly.
So
If you
here's
could just
hoping.
send those comments
I
along.
will absolutely.
Thank you.
You can find the show obviously anywhere that podcasts exist, like the show on Facebook or follow it on Twitter at Backroll the Oracle, and subscribe to the show on YouTube so you can watch these things happen. Follow the Batman Universe on Facebook and Twitter as well, and support the Batman Universe by subscribing to Patreon. Once again, thanks to Mile High Comics for sponsoring Backroll the Oracle, the Barbara Grimm podcast. And until next time, fly on, Babs and Studio Ghibli and Nausicaa, Kiki and Sophie and all of those females,
That's how they
Chihiros.
do.
That's
They
what they
fly.
do.